Hello and welcome to another episode of Tech About Town, brought to you by Communitech and Elevate IP. My name's Alex Kinsella.
And I'm Allison Peel.
We're back in the studio with Communitech CEO Sheldon McCormick. How are you?
I am great. It's good to be back.
It's good to be back. It's been 6 months.
Well, it's
Has
been
it?
6 calendar months.
6 calendar months.
But if you really count the weeks, it's like 5 months of work. I
Yeah.
had a near heart attack on September 1st when LinkedIn said, "Congrats on 6 months at Communitech." But then I realized I started the end of April, and it was September 1st when I saw that notification. So it was only really 4 months of work. As you remember, Alex, I said I'm holding on to the New Guy brand as long as I possibly can.
Yes.
So,
I support that.
keeping that consistent, moving ahead.
I think it's very good. I find LinkedIn on the anniversaries is always off because even for me, it'll be like, congratulations on 6 years. I'm like, it hasn't been 6 years yet. It's only been whatever. And they focus more on, I guess, those notifications of, are you interested? Are you hiring? And I'm like, I'm not. I work by myself. I'm not hiring anybody right now. But thanks for asking. So congratulations on 5 months.
Thank you. It's been great. We're going to get into it today, I guess.
We are going to get into it today. So it's September that we're recording this. It's going to air during one of the highlights of the calendar year here in Waterloo region. Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest is coming up. So the question that we have, and we've been discussing, is on lederhosen. So what is the lederhosen situation happening here? I feel
What's the plan?
Are you going to get them? That's the big question.
Well, I am going full embrace this year.
Okay.
So I'm in fact going this afternoon to the guy. I won't give the guy's address because, I don't have permission to do so. But if you know, right? Apparently. Yeah. So I'm going to the guy this afternoon with a couple of our staff members who are, going to be my river guides. And I would love for Oktoberfest to be, kind of like what the Stampede has become in Calgary. I think that would be a pretty good goal for the community.
So, and this is not your first Oktoberfest, not your first rodeo.
No, I like how you brought that back to the Stampede reference there. It is not my first, but I am hosting a party as well to kick things off at my house. And so nice. I'm excited about that. As I said, full embrace of Oktoberfest.
So you're going like full in
for
this.
Yeah.
So then do you have Fest Hall nights picked out?
I do. I've got the babysitters booked. And we also have a hold on all the Communitech staff for the keg tap on Friday. So we'll be there for that. And then, of course, we have techtoberfest happening at Communitech with a big group of partners in the community that are helping us to produce an event on the 16th. And so that'll be fun. So, yeah, we are excited.
There's a whole bunch. I'm going on First Friday to Concordia. That's booked out. And then keg tapping. I'm supposed to pick up my parents from the airport.
The day of the keg tapping?
The day of the keg tapping. And I looked at the flight time and they land at 11. And I'm like, you could sit at the airport for like 3 hours, right? Like
that's okay, Mom and Dad.
I might actually call and get a car for them. Call Brentwood and get them a car. There you go. Okay, so moving on from Oktoberfest. On today's episode, we want to talk about what's happened over the last 5 months. Where you are with the new plan, the new strategy. One of the biggest things, of course, is going back to the older brand, the legacy brand. I don't know, what are we saying? Legacy?
We just call it OG.
The OG
it's not
brand.
Legacy, it's
going
OG.
back to the OG brand is a big thing. A lot of more community events. Recently, in like late September, you had Founders Ann's Physicist was hosted here in the CAF. What was the guy from OpenAI? Was he senior? I should know this. I should read this.
Salman Chowdhury, who is the head of research and engineering for ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's a pretty big get. Yeah. How does that tie into, like we've talked before about applied AI and Waterloo's opportunity to really lead in that? So what kind of came out of that conversation that really stuck out to you as an opportunity?
Well, I think first, if I take a step back, the reason Salman was interested in coming here is we have incredible depth of talent. So he was excited to kind of come to town. And he's familiar with the community because there's a ton of Waterloo grads and at OpenAI, as well as a number of different folks from different companies that have passed through Waterloo over the years that are at OpenAI now. So it wasn't as though he wasn't familiar, but he was interested to kind of see what's been happening lately, what's kind of the state of affairs in the community. It didn't take much to convince him to come out, and I think he had a really good time. And is actually, we've had a number of different follow-up conversations with him since as well. So, but shout out to Nabil Fahil, who joined us full-time at Communitech a few weeks ago, who did most of the legwork to organize that event. And I think there'll be more of those events to come in the near future.
Did he have the black market hummus out at the event, or is that?
Of course.
Oh, there you go. I'm a big fan of the hummus.
For folks who know Nabil, they would probably describe him as persistent, and it took a lot of. I think anytime you have somebody like that who's got a very, very busy calendar, or someone like Salman, it takes some persistence to get them to fly across the continent and come and do an event. But I think that from what I recall, Salman said right at the end of the day, it was the incentive of Nabil's mom doing the cooking, which, he said, how could I say no to that? And ultimately, it's what got him here. So
yeah, if you haven't had a chance to have Nabil's mom's cuisine, it is outstanding. I went to an event last year, and I think I hovered around that table for far too long.
Nabil joked, most come for the food.
That's right.
Most come for the food.
That's right.
The big thing out of that, though, is, so we're talking about AI in Waterloo region. What are the opportunities? Over the last 5 months, have you had conversations that have kind of shown you, hey, there's a way that Communitech can support, whether it's founders, whether it's, post-secondary in making, that bit of reality, right? Because I think part of the conversation we had coming out of Waterloo Tech Week, again, was a lot of talent kind of comes here, develops, and leaves. So are there opportunities in the last 5 months, especially on the AI side of things, of how do we get the talent to stay here?
I'd reframe it a little bit. Okay. Let's talk about Salman visiting as an anecdote here, which is, I don't know if the talent leaves and it's as straightforward as that. I think there's a bit of a network effect and a kind of cycling in and out. And I think the question for us at Communitech and for the ecosystem overall is, like, how do you activate the network? How do you pull people in while they're here? If they're in San Francisco or somewhere else, how do you get them still connected here? Whether that's giving advice to companies, whether it's opening offices, whether it's moving back. I don't know if it's as simple as people come here and then they leave. I think it's a little bit more dynamic than that. And one of the reasons we're so focused on community activation is that we want that network, the people, the ideas, and the capital to be flowing. And so I think that's going to be a big part of Communitech going forward, right? Is to think not how do we stop, the flow of people, from here to Silicon Valley, but how do you just increase the velocity of the connectivity between the different places, and then within all the different places here as well.
The thing that kind of jumps out at me, and that is, we talk a lot about ecosystem. And an ecosystem is, all the organizations and companies and post-secondary and everything that's here. You're looking at it, if I'm correct on this, more of a network than an ecosystem, right? So like we had someone on, that your network is your net worth, which I love that line. It should be on a t-shirt. Do you see that? Is that kind of, that's the value here is, yeah, you might leave and go down to the valley. You might leave and go to Toronto. You might leave and go to London. But the network is the part that really matters in terms of, whether it's bringing, new opportunities here, remote opportunities, bringing companies back eventually, or things like that.
Well, let me say my focus and Communitech's focus is to ensure that this place is and maintains, globally competitive status as a tech ecosystem. And crucially, I want that tech ecosystem that's globally competitive to be anchored in companies that start here, that scale here, and stay here. But we're not going to actually manifest that vision if we build an island here. So we have to be really well networked, and that means that we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of the fact that there's a lot of people really from all over the world that want to access this marketplace, right, and come here for the talent. And again, I'd point to the fact that we could have the current head of research and engineering at ChatGPT to come in for a day and a half, and we had I think about 175 guests come in that evening. That is the kind of thing that you have to do if you're going to be globally competitive in terms of like creating the flow of capital and people that we're going to need to do if we're going to make that vision come to life.
I'd love to know from your first 5 months, like working 5 months, what keeps you up at night? Like, what are you really concerned about achieving or accomplishing?
Oh, that's a good question. You really, you're putting me on the spot. What keeps me up at night? Well, there's just a desire to move, quickly, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, we've got now 28 years of history at Communitech. We're a relatively large organization in terms of not just the size of our team, but also the number of member companies that we have. We've got long-term agreements in place to deliver for several partners on the private side and the public side. And so I would say what keeps me up at night most is the tension that I feel, which is between, on the one hand, wanting to move very quickly to take advantage of some opportunities that we have and to fix some things that I think have to be fixed. I have to balance that with the realities of commitments that we've made to deliver on things to critical partners and to bring the team along and to bring the community along as well, right? So that's the tension that I think that I have to balance.
Part of the new strategy is community and tech. Is there a reason you've put community first? Do you see that as a competitive advantage for us?
I wish it was more intellectual than what I'm about to say, but really it's just that it comes with what's in the name, right?
Yep.
I think we've got a lot of traction this summer talking about the idea of not a radical reinvention of Communitech, but actually just going back to the recipe that worked, adapted for what's next, right? So back to what worked, adapted for the current era that we're in as an ecosystem. And so, going back to what's in the name is kind of the most simple way of describing what it means to execute. So huge focus on community connection, collaboration, connectivity, because everybody I spoke to this summer described how they felt like the community wasn't quite the same since COVID. And I'm not going to litigate all the reasons that might be the case, but that was kind of a universal feel coming out of a lot of conversations throughout the summer. And so I felt like it was critical that we address that first. So first and foremost, the objective for Communitech in this next year is to reconnect the community. And I think we're actually well on our way in already doing that. And it means focusing on events and activations to get people together, but it also means just being very deliberate about collaborating with all the amazing groups that we have in town, right? And then on the tech side, again, getting back to what's in our name, we happen to be living through this really exciting era of AI commercialization and adoption. And so just to be relevant and credible, kind of meet the ecosystem where it is, we have to be thinking about AI because it's top of mind for virtually everybody in the tech sector right now. Like, I haven't met a team who is not thinking about internal adoption of AI. And then a lot of the new startups that we speak to are thinking about becoming AI native companies and commercializing AI. So it's just top of mind for everybody.
Yeah, I was at an HR event last week, and AI was the dominant theme at this 3 panels. Every one of them dove into AI in some level. One of the big ones was around AI adoption inside companies. So, Communitech's 28 years old. It's adapted with the times. You've a variety of other companies and government, government groups that are going through the exact same thing. How do you kind of go about that as internally within Communitech, developing the policies, developing guardrails, and thinking about that of how we want everyone to use AI, adopt it in ways that makes their jobs easier, allows them to focus on more pressing matters. But how do you do it in a safe way?
Well, Communitech's no different from all of the companies in the ecosystem in that we're trying to adopt AI and there's broadly, I think, two ways I think about it, which is we can adopt AI for the purposes of capitalizing on some opportunity, like doing something net new for the first time using AI. And then there's also efficiency gains that can be had, right, by internally adopting AI in some capacity. I think generally speaking, most of the AI adoption initiatives that I hear about from different companies, they kind of meet those two broad buckets. And so the journey that we're on is actually not unlike the journey that many different companies are on. And for us, actually had to start with the principle that we're going to start to operate here more like the startups and the scale-ups, that we serve. And so that means, that's a cultural mindset. It's also a series of operating playbooks and a new operating model for Communitech. And we've actually been really quite busy since I started back in the spring to make progress against that goal of starting to operate more like the tech companies that we serve.
I think another thing that comes up in the conversations is around this topic of being AI native. So a startup can build an AI native product, and then also the idea of an AI native startup itself, right? So you are, we were talking to Mike Kirkup, and he went through a thing where he uses AI to do competitive analysis, and it's something they would spend hours on, hundreds of hours on previously, and now as an AI native startup, they can do that much more efficiently. Do you see, or are there examples of ones that you can see where Communitech is adopting an AI native process where it was a manual process before, or is that still too early in the adoption?
I think we're too early.
Yeah.
I think what we're at, honestly, right now is we are in the very early innings where we have to get some basic processes documented, right? Like get the processes documented, get clear targets and KPIs in place for various initiatives, and then get aligned on what we're trying to achieve. And then from there, we can kind of work our way to think through, okay, what are some opportunity areas where we think there could be either opportunity for kind of net new value creation of some kind for the companies in the ecosystem, or for us to implement something that's just going to improve the delivery. So, I think a lot about notionally about the idea of like, how do we get our kind of cost per member served down, right? And I think AI is going to be a big part of that.
All right. So in addition to finding efficiencies and new, opportunities with AI, the other part that's changing in Communitech on October 1st is a return to office. So the team will be back in the hub, working side by side, full time. What was kind of the logic behind making that decision and moving there? And is it to be in front of founders? Is it to be around each other? Is it a mix of all that?
Yeah, so October 1st, we're back in office Monday to Friday. This is actually a change that I announced back in early June. So probably around 6 weeks into my tenure, I felt really strong conviction that our team needed to be back in office. And the reason we gave everybody until October 1st was primarily, for a lot of folks, it's a big change for childcare or for a dependent, whether it's a parent or partner, you name it. There's a whole number of reasons that we wanted to give people some time to sort through what is not an insignificant change of lifestyle. And so at the end of the day, I know it's not perfect, right? Because it's not necessarily in the middle of summer. Even though we gave people 4.5 months, it's not, it's never like an easy thing to have to confront. But I wanted to give people as much time as we could.
In terms of, let me rephrase that before I say it. With the change, now people are back in. Do you have kind of goals or expectations for what that will mean for the founders and other tech workers who come into the hub? Like, do you expect that to lead to more people coming in, and kind of, are you thinking of like and I hate to go back to like, it used to be packed all the time. And I know that comes up in conversations. Where's your kind of head on that one? Like, do you see that as kind of inspiring more people to kind of come in from other companies?
I think, let me take a step back and I'll say, I'm not necessarily sure if return to, 5 day a week in office is the right fit for every company. Fortunately, I don't have to make that proclamation. For Communitech, I think it's the right decision. The simple assessment is when community is literally in your name, I think it's important that you're here in person. But it goes a lot deeper than that, which is, I think, number one, we have an imperative to change. I think the community's been asking for us to kind of meet the moment and help to reconnect the community coming out of COVID and make sure that, we are reflecting like the cultural behaviors of the ecosystem we're meant to serve. So I felt like it was an urgent imperative for us to make progress. And I felt like we would have the best chance of success in terms of mobilizing if we were together every day. Because I think the transaction costs are just lower. And although I'm not sure if return to office or working in office is right for every company, I do think that for early stage companies where there's a high degree of ambiguity and where you have to iterate very quickly, that there are some really serious gains to be had when you're together every day because there's just less friction, right? You don't have to set up the meeting if you can tap somebody on the shoulder and have the conversation right away.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of the rationale for me is I just think that we were operating from a position of needing to mobilize fast and to kind of put points on the board quickly to generate momentum. And then, I just think we are a very kind of networked organization. Like we are constantly hosting people or we're planning events, we're having folks convene, right? And so I think if you're going to be a convener, you don't necessarily have to be working at your office, but you can't be working at home. You've got to be out in the community to increase the surface area of the interactions that you're going to have. And so, that aspect might be relatively unique to Communitech in the nature of our objectives and what we are as an organization. But for all those reasons, I felt fairly strong conviction in making that change. And quite honestly, I actually hope that a lot more of the founders and CEOs in the community make a decision like this, because I think we have incredible depth of talent in this region. We have incredible concentration. And if we're not taking advantage of the fact that we can be together in close proximity relatively easily, then I think we're just not actually taking advantage of one of the critical assets that make this community very, very unique and differentiated.
I think one of the things that you said really sticks out is not necessarily being in our office or the office. It's about being outside of your home. So maybe that means you're working at the AC one day or the Catalyst or Den 18 or whatever it looks like, but it's more about making those in-person connections, which I think we all participated in online networking and all of that through COVID, and nothing replaces that one-on-one in-person connection. And I think that's really important too. It's not just about being in a desk, sitting at the hub, but it's about being part of that community piece that brings you out into the world.
Yeah, I think Communitech will be, at its best if it is a collective of companies, right? If it's a movement of the companies and the leaders in Waterloo region, that probably gives it the highest likelihood of having success and impact. Mm-hmm. And if Communitech is known as an address, I don't think that's going to be the way that we reach the potential for the organization. And it's important to me that we are where the member companies are. And, there's critically, important part of convening them here in downtown Kitchener at the Tannery, and that's going to be a part of Communitech in the indefinite future. But, as we talked about a few months ago, there's a lot of other places in the community where we have a huge number of founders, right? There's Catalyst Commons, there's University of Waterloo, and of course the list goes on. And so if we can be there, activating the community, hosting events, working in partnership with some of those organizations, I think that's going to be really positive.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, so looking forward 6 months, but a LinkedIn 5 months, is there something that sits out there, like an event, an experience, a milestone that you go, hey, like the strategy has worked? Like I always use the example, like we had True North Festival years ago. And I said, for me, the success is a bunch of guys walking around in polos and khakis with their conference badges still on, walking around uptown Waterloo. Because to me, like that's Southwest, you go South by Southwest, that's what you see all the time. It happened. I felt really good about it. Do you have something similar to that where you would see this and go, it's working?
Yeah, definitely. And it comes back to the idea of what does it take to have Communitech operate like the companies that it serves. We have to be very, very clear about our objectives. And then we actually have to, put some targets out there. And we are unlike some of our, member companies in that we don't drive toward revenue and market share and things like that the way that a typical startup or scale up would. So the objectives for me and the organization over the course of the next 18 months, the first is to reconnect the community. And the metrics of success there, I don't think anything's perfect, but I'm thinking about it in terms of there's a quantity component and there's a quality component. The quantity side is I would love for us to be regularly activating about 10% of the workforce in Waterloo region. Like there's roughly 30,000 tech workers in our community. And I think given our platform and our resources, we should at least be in some way interacting with and delivering value for, let's say, 3,000 of those people. That's about 10%. And, that number, is it perfect? Probably not. And, could we debate the merits of it being higher or lower? But I think that's a pretty good starting point because it gives our team clarity of intent, right? We're not going to be able to meaningfully deliver value and activate 3,000 people if we're not meeting them where they are and doing things that they're asking for. So that's the quantity side. On the quality side, I think that there's something really important about late stage founders and executives being mentors in our community for the early stage founders and their teams. And so we are really blessed in this community that we have some incredible people who have been founders or been early stage execs and have gone on the journey, right, of building companies locally, or maybe they spent time, in other tech hubs, whether it's the Valley or something else. And I would love for a really meaningful chunk of those folks to be invested, mentoring the early stage cohorts that we have. And so that to me is that's the quality piece. So if we're activating, a really large group of the community, and we've got, some of these incredible mentors giving their time back to support the next generation, I think that's a good proxy on community connection. So that's our first objective. The second objective is around AI adoption. And so the things that we're looking at there is to what extent can we trace our efforts back to things that helped companies in the region move the needle on their AI adoption strategies?
We use AI for the podcast.
That's great. You can help me check off my goal of each week identifying some new AI use case for us.
The number one use case for me for AI for podcasts isn't audio, is not editing. It's the timestamps for the description, because I can listen through it, but then I'm terrible at taking notes and saying this is the theme of at 12 minutes they talked about AI adoption. Thanks AI for doing that for me and saving me
all that time.
Saved me at least an hour that I can spend
doing other podcasts.
Doing something, who knows? Yeah, listening to a podcast. Well, thank you for joining us. We hope to have you back in 5 months, 6 months, depending again on how that time frame works. As always, if you have questions about how Communitech can help you start, grow, and succeed, you can visit communitech.ca or follow along on social media at Communitech on all the major platforms. If you ever have suggestions for a topic or a guest, we're always open to that. And thank you for listening.
Thanks, everybody.